3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GrokTALK.com. We are your feared, extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GrokTALK.com. GrokTALk. Alright, welcome back to GrokTALK, brought to you by the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers and the bloggers at GraniteGrok.com. Visit us on Facebook and Twitter. Just look for Granite Grok. You can check us out on any number of streaming websites. We are on YouTube and Ustream, and you have no excuse for not listening to fabulous guests like we've had today. Darlene Pollock, of course, Dr. Jason Sorens was just on the program, and we are going to start a segment with this gentleman right here, Kevin Kervick. And I'm listening to my microphone as I play around with the board, and it just sounds different for some reason. Anyway, let's turn some microphones on so we can have some conversation. Kevin, thanks for coming in.
Nice to be here, as always.
Oh, yeah, welcome back.
Thank you.
Of course, this is an interesting set of circumstances because the subject today has to do with somebody who's technically your boss. Yeah, so...
let's see how far academic freedom stretches.
It's narrowing, I'm afraid.
Do you ever wonder why most college freshmen cannot write well, or why high school students cannot make change at the cash register? The president of Southern New Hampshire University may have just given us the answers to those questions.
Yes.
From Bedford Patch this morning, with regard to a subject we were talking about. The president of SNHU is gone all social justice on us. And you wanted to come in and talk about that.
Yeah, it's an important issue. And I want to talk about activism, conservative activism generally.
Sure.
Because I'm always, I admire the way progressive use events to create activism, right? And I don't think conservatives do that as well, and I think we really should. And this is obviously an event that I think that we should really exploit, that makes our point really well. So that's what I'm trying to do. A little bit risky, but not so much. I'm an adjunct professor, so I'm just a lowly, sort of person at the school there. So I have no job to lose. I can lose the opportunity to teach a course or two, but really that's not that.
And because you have your own business.
I have my own business, have the other things I do. So I like teaching, but this is an important issue, and I wanted to try to, as always, encourage other conservatives to speak out, speak truth to power, use situations to make our case. I don't think we do that as well as we could. And I think that sometimes it does mean putting your livelihood on the line. Sometimes it means people aren't going to like you, which you guys always say. We like getting people mad at us. I think Steve said the other day, you like to be ruthless. You're going to continue to be ruthless. So I want to encourage people to do that, because I think it's really important given the sorry state of affairs.
Well, it's about principles. There's been a couple of really good discussions on Facebook lately about some of the articles I put up this week. The one about capitulation, how much is enough?
Right.
Ask people how much is enough? How much government is enough? How much regulation is enough? How much interference is enough? How much is enough? They can't answer the question. The answer is there is no enough. And then now that's why there's principles. That's why there's a constitution, and that's why we're not going to lay down.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Well, this situation was, I'll try to be as brief as I can. The blog post came from the President LeBlanc is his name, from SNHU. And long story short, what he was saying is he wants to develop critical thinking skills among the students because, according to some survey taken, the critical thinking skills at SNHU are below average. They're in the 40th percentile in terms of all critical thinking skills in the country, or something like that.
Doesn't this require a definition of both the word critical
and
thinking?
So I will get to that. So
and were those 40% by any chance the attendees of your classes?
I hope not, because I really work hard on this.
No. What I mean is, were the 40% that were capable of it?
Okay.
Your
we'll see.
Graduates.
We'll see. It was clear to me by reading the blog, which you can all see online. Go to just Google Dr. Paul LeBlanc, SNHU. You'll see this blog. What he's saying is that critical thinking equals social justice.
What? So
if you apply social justice, you are a critical thinker. If you're a critical thinker, you will be adopting kind of social justice. And, the definition of social justice is essentially, there are oppressed people in the world, right? And they're oppressed by richer people, typically whiter people, let's be honest, and that the way to rectify all the bad things that have happened in the world is by shifting stuff from those powerful people, typically those powerful white people, to the oppressed people.
I brought this along so that we could have... Jonah Goldberg has an entire chapter in Tyranny of Cliches about social justice, and he writes, the social justice syllogism goes something like this. 1. We are liberals. 2. Liberals believe it is imperative that social justice be advanced wherever we find it. 3. Therefore, whatever we believe to be imperative is social justice. And there's the corollary. If you oppose liberals in advancing what they want, you are against not just liberals, but social justice
Absolutely.
itself.
You are not a critical thinker.
Correct.
If you oppose liberals, if you oppose social justice, you are not a critical thinker. Thereby, you are dumb.
We are subhuman, actually, which
Yeah.
in a lot of cases, that's what progressives believe. And, you know, it really is a slap in the face, and I hope somebody's pointed out to this esteemed professor, doctor, leader, whatever, is that, thanks, you've just insulted half of the population of the United States. How's that for social justice? Does that count? I mean, where's the diversity in that? And I know I'm throwing this stuff out, and you're smiling. Everybody here is smiling because, you know, they don't look at it that way. Diversity is only when you think like me.
Exactly. You're speaking a foreign language to the other half of the population that just thinks this is so obvious common sense to them. You know, so this is where he's coming from. He put this out there. Apparently there was some fallout from it, but I was alarmed by it. And I responded to him in several of very nice letters. And essentially what I did is I said, you know, I don't know if you have any conservative representation in the professor class or really in the administrative class around you, but you probably ought to have some. And I'd be willing to help facilitate that.
I read the email exchange. It was very polite and very professional.
Instead of saying this is ridiculous, I said, you know, you probably need a little more diversity, and I'd be glad to try to help with that, to provide that different point of view.
And what was the reaction for our listeners and watchers?
So his reaction was sort of surprised that I would do that, but that he believes social justice is the way to get to critical thinking. Essentially what he was trying to say is that if you adopt social justice, it helps you get to critical thinking, and it allows people to develop the means to be critical thinkers. So he responded in kind of a philosophical, academic way.
Something so stupid only an intellectual could say it?
Basically, yeah.
Basically, Circle 22.
But didn't take me up on my offer, obviously. But
surprise!
I told him that I was really activated. I mean, this is what I think I do best. I think this is what conservatives do best. Is we look at evidence and data, we gather empirical insights to discern reality. We talk about what is actually true. We don't deal in the world of political correctness. We think political correctness is psychosis, right? So we deal in reality, right?
So this is indeed critical thinking. It's also, in many ways, the scientific method, the true scientific method, where you weigh the evidence, put forward a hypothesis, and be prepared to have it knocked down cheerfully in the pursuit of truth.
Exactly. And that's what I do in my classes. I'm constantly prodding my students, pushing them, challenging them, try to look, think outside the box, look to the evidence, right? And so I took this as an opportunity to do that. And I say, Dr. Blanc, I'm going to really take this to my classes and really use this as an opportunity. And so I did. So in the next class, I talked to my students. I teach 2 classes, and one was very, politically charged. I teach human sexuality, and there's no field now that's more fraught with,
political
correctness and
especially
tension
on a university campus.
And your phrase again?
Yeah.
Left-handed.
Left-handed albino lesbian studies. Yeah, that's what it is. That's the class.
Oh my God.
Whenever these social justice topics or women's studies or gender studies comes up, I pop out the phrase left-handed albino lesbian studies.
You would not have believed some of the stuff that came out of my students' mouth this semester.
Sure we would.
The gender field is fraught with this bizarre, stuff these days. It's all in the current zeitgeist. It's coming out, and the students have all these ideas, and it's just really bizarre. None of it research-based, factually based, but it's sort of out there.
It makes them feel good.
Sexual climate change.
Are they
gender fluidity, things like that.
So they're believers in random predators using alternate bathrooms.
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much. So I really worked hard at presenting all points of view. So I brought Camille Paglia in, talked about her works. She's sort of a sort of radical feminist in a good way, lesbian person, and she sort of takes on the gender feminist establishment. I brought her work in. I brought some Christian stuff in. I brought some stuff from the Catholic Church, talking about the sanctity of marriage, how they view marriage. Because I had a couple of students saying, we're not really hearing our point of view. Some more conservative students. So I kind of brought that in. But we also talked about all of the prevailing kind of
the writings of
feminist
Benedict, not Francis, I presume.
No. It was actually a conference called Unum, where a lot of theologians came to talk about marriage, what marriage really meant from a theological perspective, and the importance of man-woman marriage,
benefits to culture,
benefits
society
to culture,
in general.
all that. Yes, so I brought that into class, showed a video about that. Rick Warren actually spoke, right? And so
oh, nice.
Some of the students actually really liked that. But
Rick Warren's great. I mean,
75.
whether you like his books or not, if you ever listen to anything he has to say, it's brilliant.
It was. I'll show you this video. It's just dynamite the way he talked about marriage. But 75% of the class was probably sort of dominant, sort of gender feminist sort of stuff, which is the most of the literature we have in sexuality is coming from that perspective. So, very balanced class, I thought, but I try to bring all of them. So I'll try to finish this story quick. So I after that conversation, I went to the class, and we happened to be talking about gender and homosexuality. And I said, just out of curiosity, and I talked about critical thinking. Let's be critical thinkers here. I said, just out of curiosity, what percentage of the population do you believe identifies as gay or lesbian? And they all raised their hand. I'd say out of the 30 students, 25 of them believed that the percentage was 30%.
Yeah.
30% of the population is gay or lesbian. And so I said, how do you arrive at that conclusion? Where are you getting this data? And I said, well, one person said, well, I use my own experience. And I said, well, that's not how you arrive at critical thinking, by your own experience. You can have a psychotic experience. That's not going to help you arrive at critical thinking. Said, others said, well,
come to my house.
I look around campus and that's what I see. Or, I see what's in the media. Or so they didn't really have good information. So then I presented 10 studies from actually a gay lesbian think tank, actually, all of which had the number somewhere around 1 to 5% of the population is gay or lesbian, which is pretty much where we're at. Most people think it's probably around 2 to 4% of the population.
I was quote 4 generally, just to be nice.
Gay or lesbian, right?
And that came from the Census Department, which just validated that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that number is probably exaggerating the number of really seriously gay.
Probably more gays than lesbians also in terms of the data, how it's picked. But I don't really care how many are gay or lesbian, only that it's used as a political tool at times.
Sure.
But the important thing for me is they're not thinking critically, right?
No, aside from personal experience, if you look around a college campus, what you see is a lot of experimentation.
Yes.
Which doesn't necessarily reflect the long-term leanings.
Some of which is rape, right?
Yes, usually belatedly declared as such.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's true, and it's interesting because I watch Home and Garden television, and every other or third house hunters has a gay couple, and every TV show has some gay or lesbian friend in it, but most people don't have that experience, and I'm like, well, it's just them pushing the narrative, I tell my kids that. I go, you see the stuff on TV, and if it doesn't make any sense to you, ask questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we're supposed to be in academics about the search for truth.
Mm-hmm.
We're not supposed to be pushing narratives, social justice or otherwise. But obviously, this is what Dr. LeBlanc wants, is to push. And he, is essentially wanting us or making us push a narrative that we may or may not agree with in our class. He wants us to propagandize our students.
Well, in essence, you're seeing the latter stages of progressivism having taken the quote-unquote high ground in academia, now trying to redo all of academia, not for academics, but as you said, the narrative. We see this in journalism. It's all about the narrative. We see this in politics. It's all about the narrative. And that's all it seems to be that our public lives are about. It is the narrative.
Yes.
And we conservatives don't own the facilities, except in the new media, talk radio, the two major exceptions, of being able to put on part of the new media. Yes, thank you. we do have a narrative to tell, as Steve and Mike have said. It's all about the principles and the foundational stuff. We're talking about it all the time because we don't even see the NHGOP talking about principles. And yet that should be one of the main bastions of principles, not only just to have it in their platform, talk about it at their events, but actually enacting it into law. And even they can't get that straight up and down that vertical corridor.
No, they can't.
And we're going to find out what some of those results are later on today.
We're going to take 60 seconds and we'll come back to continue this absolutely fabulous conversation. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Baby, it's cold outside.
It's freezing cold.
Baby, it's cold outside.
When's that global warming coming?
Hoping that you dropped in.
Welcome back to GrokTAK.
Oh, I got distracted.
You did. I know, Mike's waving his iPad in your face.
Yes, we are back. We are GrokTAK, a production of GraniteGrok.com, New Hampshire's leading conservative libertarian blog site. We are here with Kevin Kervick. We're talking about that nebulous idea of social justice, which is basically anything that anybody wants to say it is on the left, including his boss,
Dr. Paul LeBlanc.
Dr. Paul LeBlanc, the head of SNHU. And we were just about ready. I was in full bore mode when Steve cut me off because of the break.
Brought the hammer down.
Yes. He has a good way of making sure that anvil lands directly on the noggin.
I have to keep you in check, or you just keep going.
It just happens to be your turn this time.
That's right.
But I get cut off often enough.
He gets cut off too. Well, you like to talk at the end of the segment when I have no time, and I love to hear what you have to say, but just not then.
Yeah.
So,
hold that thought. Wait a minute, the squirrel stole it.
yeah.
But we were talking about the changing of the culture, and I was about to bring up that the late Andrew Breitbart said that politics is downstream from culture. And what we see is the progressives are changing the culture from the inside out. That the communists were all about the social revolution with guns to back it up with. And what the Fabian socialists of Britain and then the progressives coming out of the Frankfurt School said, and Gramsci of Italy said, change the culture, you'll have your revolution as a part of that. We talked about part of that with Dr. Sorens about his ethics and economics class.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But here, you've got it right. If you change what is believed, because we all know, as Rush says, those college kids and high school kids are skulls full of mush. They're going to listen to the most authoritarian person in front of them. And the first thing they say is, don't listen to your parents. We hear that in schools, high school, junior high, elementary school. Listen to us teachers. Now you're hearing it from the professors. As our society goes from secularism, and the government promotes single women with children, adult males go away, you see that the culture has changed. And this is a perfect example of it. The role of schools are not to teach social justice. It is not supposed to teach. Critical thinking is not just left thinking. Because I'm highly insulted when you say you can't have critical thinking without social justice. I'm sorry, as a conservative who has a couple of degrees, who tries to think these things out, I think I do as much critical thinking as the next person, and probably far more. And the big thing is, where's the knowledge base for this that you pointed out in your class? Well, it just seems like that to me, my personal anecdotes. Therefore, it all must be true, instead of, as Mike said, the scientific theory of, What's the hypothesis? What's the experimentation? What's the data at the end? And he put his hand up.
I would argue that you can't have critical thinking with social justice.
I would agree. It prejudices your thought, so then you're not able to think clearly. And look at the Ferguson; it's a good example. I mean, you have a bunch of delusional people. I'm sorry to be so harsh about it.
That's right.
No, they are delusional because the guy was a criminal. He was appropriately shot, and they deluded themselves into thinking he was innocent. They deluded themselves into thinking he was
because according to their worldview, that has to be how it was.
I'm going to get the emails again.
No, I'm the one that said it. But Dr. LeBlanc was trying to exploit the Ferguson situation to create this social justice narrative that cops are evil, white people are evil, and the oppressed people are being oppressed nonstop, and he's trying to use that. Well, that's sort of fallen apart now, right?
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
fallen apart.
And even the mess in New York over Eric Garner was originally triggered by de Blasio himself. Not by what he said and did afterwards, which was beyond stupid, but what he said and did right before it happened, which was demand that the police aggressively enforce the loose cigarette laws because revenue.
He
liberals.
should resign. So people called him to resign. He should resign tomorrow.
So they aggressively policed, and the guy's morbid obesity took him out.
Exactly. Yeah. If I could segue a little bit, I got involved in...
Join us, squirrels.
I became... you're right on target with my stream of thought. I became involved in conservative thinking through the door of men's issues back in the early 90s. Being around a lot of women in human service, a lot of radical feminists, and, the male bashing was just, that was just part of what you did. So in supporting men's issues, I got into conservative kind of thinking. And it's very clear today that what this is about is an anti-male, anti-white male especially, anti-heterosexual sort of philosophy. They're coming after us because we're the bad guys and we have the money. Right? We got to get the money away from us to get it to everybody else that has less of it. So it's a socialist, anti-male sort of philosophy that that undergirds
white privilege.
And as the most privileged black people in America have said frequently, that is theft and tyranny when you take the work of another to give to the lazy. And I'm referring to Walter E. Williams, the most esteemed professor, and Dr. Thomas Sowell.
Yeah. Who've done pretty well for themselves.
Who've done very well by working hard. See, these guys grew up in the 50s. These guys, like Herman Cain, like not so much Alan West, but his parents, and the traditional black families where the family stayed together, they worked hard, they wanted to make sure their kids did better than they did, and they didn't want no stinking government help. All these folks have done well for themselves, or at least done well enough, and and they remain attached to traditional morality and avoid government help.
Absolutely.
We've created an underclass, or rather, the Democrats have created an underclass,
which they need.
Well, it isn't just an underclass, Mike. It really is the full fruition on steroids of identity politics that pits one group against the other, and that because of political correctness, the only people left to go after are people like those. They're coming after us because of our race. They're racist against us.
Exactly.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. The Department of Justice says if you're black, you can't be racist. Only whites can be racist.
The identity politics creates the underclass, though.
Yes,
that's what it did in England.
Well, I'm not sure.
Think?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't so much identity politics as simply typical socialist policies.
Well, they're kind of connected, aren't they?
They created an entire class of people who were dependent on the government dole, who only got make-work jobs handed out by the government, and massive unemployment, people sitting around at home with nothing to do but buy their booze and cigarettes, and
they could only improve their lives through crime, that kind of thing.
Who would go out for fun and steal cars and do joyrides.
I look at this, and again, from what you said, the haves and have-nots, the fruition of Saul Alinsky politics, from the haves to the have-nots, or as, who was it that I read yesterday or the day before? There's a different kind of America now. Those who do and those who don't. And that's a logical progression of the haves to have-nots from those who do and those who don't. And we come back to Dr. Sorens again, and to some degree Darlene Pollock, of ethics. Ethics, responsibility, rights, morality. It all comes down to, as much as the Republican Party wants to run away from it, it is about the social issues, because the social issues are all about morality and ethics, and the laws are only an expression of that. So Andrew Breitbart was right.
Yes.
Hey, I finally squirreled everything right in a row.
Yeah, and as I put to Dr. LeBlanc, the social justice narrative, which is fine, that's one narrative out there, that needs to be balanced with the freedom, opportunity, responsibility, and resilience narrative, right? Especially the resilience narrative.
I like that.
Yeah, people are successful when they're resilient in spite of whatever oppression they may be suffering. And we need to teach resilience. We need to teach that resilience is really what's important in any society.
It's not what knocks you down, it's how you get back up again.
Absolutely.
Courage.
Yeah.
Courage.
Gotta have courage.
Yeah.
Or what is your favorite phrase now from Galaxy Quest?
Oh, never give up, never surrender.
Yeah, I like it.
Well, that's just where we are. You know, people are like, how come you're picking at Republicans? Well, like I said in my rather lengthy article, I said the only reason, if they did what they were supposed to, we wouldn't be picking on them at all.
But they don't listen to that.
It's about those principles. There's a constitution that limits what a politician can do, and we build principles around those ideas.
And they all take oaths to support it, and they all, or nearly all, deliberately undermine the New Hampshire and the U.S.
Right, and let me ask you a question. If I was going to invest energy in trying to draw somebody back to the principles, would I go attack those guys on the left who are never going to agree with me, or would I talk to the people on the right who might be pushed back into the column of conservative constitutional principles?
Yeah, I mean, now we've won the national election. Now it's time to really hold their feet to the fire. Hold the John Boehner's feet to the fire.
I want the flames high enough that I can smell the pork from here. Okay.
That's a great line. Well, I will tell you, I have finally brought out my pike man.
Yeah.
You know, the men with the pikes. Because I've mentioned Frank Ginta again. I've left him alone for a long time.
Yeah.
I want to see what
he
he's
voted for Boehner, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
He
And so
voted for
the
Boehner.
first thing he did was show that he has no courage.
Yeah.
Frank, I'm serious. If you had courage, you would have voted against the orange one.
The people of New Hampshire gave you a second shot at this.
A second shot at being a Tea Party conservative, because that's what you claim to be, twice.
Well, he said it the first time in not so many words. This time, not there.
Speaking of Tea Party, we got a few minutes in this segment.
Actually, we don't, but if you want to stick around, we can keep going.
Oh, good, yeah.
Yeah. Join us in the squirrel segment.
And we'll just keep going. We'll go. We're getting really close to. I'm going to press the button right there.
All right.
And in 30 seconds, we're going to be on our break. So we're going to keep Kevin Kervick with us. He's going to join us in the cleanup round.
Nice.
Bat and forth. Gotta clean it all up. Gotta bring all those squirrels together and get their nuts in a row. We'll be right back. This is GrokTALK.
Grok TV.